Hey guys, Delphine here. I just want to do a quick video for you guys to talk about hermit crabs and shell swapping, as it's a very important part of their survival and keeping them happy and healthy when you have them in your house. So as you can see from my last video, the cage has changed a little bit. What's different is that there's a bunch of empty shells in here, as you can see. There's some different types of shells, as I have two types of hermit crabs. Both of which require a different type of shell, because of their abdomen, which is the part that's in the shell, is a different shape. For Ecuadorians, like my boys Bazooka and Blue, their abdomens are flat on the bottom and round on the top. That being said, they prefer openings like this, which are flat on the bottom and round on the top, just like their abdomens. While my purple pinchers, Shy Guy and Smashing Pumpkins, right there's Shy Guy. Can't really see him, but he's right there. Okay. They have a completely round abdomen, so they prefer shells like this, which are totally round. This is a turbo shell. They're very popular with purple pinchers. They're probably one of the most popular round opening shells. I bought this huge bag of shells at Walmart because I noticed that the large size had a number of different shells that were appropriate for hermit crabs. So I just bought this so I could get a random assortment of hermit crab shells. As you can see, there's one in there that's I have in this bag because it's way too big for any of my hermit crabs right now. So it had some really nice shells in it, which was nice because I don't really like to if you go and try and buy shells online, you have to pick out the certain size and the type of shell, and you have to make all sorts of decisions down to really tiny details, especially with size. They're very, very specific. And so I thought it'd be nice if I could just get a random selection because I needed to get some turbos. All the extra shells I had were de-opening shells for Ecuadorians. Because when I bought all my extra shells, I only had Ecuadorians. So it was nice to be able to get out and get some turbo shells for my two purple pinchers. So as you can see, I do have an assortment of sizes of shells here. It's important because they can be picky. The purple pinchers tend not to be so picky, but I found that Shy Guy, I had a number of these shells out for him, and he's moved them around but chose none of them. They might be a little bit too big, but I think he could fit in some of these smaller ones like this one. But I have an assortment of sizes. This shell is not an extra shell. This is the shell that my Ecuadorian Blue came in. As you can see, it's in terrible condition. This is where the opening should be, right there, but the shell was extremely cracked and mangled, and so he is now in a painted shell, which is very unusual. Hermit crabs are forced into painted shells. They don't choose them themselves, but the reason he chose the painted shell is because it was in there from my old hermit crab who passed away, Batman, and his shell obviously was in such terrible condition that anything that he could fit in would be better, and so he went into that shell. Of course, I have all sorts of shells in there right now, so when he comes out of molting, he hasn't yet, but Bazooka has. When Blue comes out, there'll be plenty of shells in here for him to choose from. The de-opening shells I have in here right now are larger than what Blue would probably need because I have these out for Bazooka. He just came out last night from molting for a couple months. As you can see, I also have some turbos in here. These are the ones that Shy Guy has been messing with, so I kept them in here. I've just moved them over to the side. And this is where Bazooka usually hangs out, so I put them over here. Ecuadorians tend to be more picky when it comes to choosing their shells. I'm hoping that Bazooka will choose one of these. Right now he's in a really small shell from a hermit crab that I had that he killed and took their shell, because there's a lot of factors that go into what shells they prefer and what shells they do not like. One of which is the amount of usage the shell has gotten, kind of like a leather shoe. It's nicer to have a nice worn-in leather shoe than it is a brand new one that needs wearing in. So he probably, that shell that other hermit crab had was probably a nice worn-in shell, and that's why he chose it. But it is small. It's this type of shell. This is a whale's eye shell. but it's a lot smaller than this. It's a pretty tiny shell, so I'm hoping he'll choose one of these bigger ones. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about some of the factors that go into shell choosing. First off, obviously, is opening. Though hermit crabs usually pick their openings depending on their abdomen shape, if they have very little options, they will go with a shell that does not fit their abdomen well. I've seen a lot of purple pinchers at the pet store who normally would be in a turbo shell like this with a round opening, but have instead chosen to go with something like this with a D-shaped opening. A lot of it has to do with the fact that those shells that they're in are painted, which means that the people who caught them from the wild forced them into the shells, like pulled them out of their old shells and then shoved them into the painted shells and forced them to stay in there, because they know they can make an extra buck if the shells are pretty as opposed to natural colored shells. So that's probably half the reason why the purple pinchers in the store are in D-shaped shells when they should be in round-shaped shells. Some other factors that go into it, of course, are size. See, this is a much bigger shell than something like this one. Hermit crabs usually like to choose a shell that fits them well, that they can, it's either a little bit too big where they can go pretty far into the shell, or just right. But as I said with Ecuadorians, they can be extremely picky, and they will stay, as Bazooka has, in a shell that's way too small for them, because they are way too picky and decide that none of the shells available to them are nice enough to change. Another factor that plays in a lot is the thickness of the shell. Shells help them stay warm or stay cool depending on the temperature of the cage or the habitat in the wild. As you can see, this shell is really, really thin. It's also very, very lightweight. So if the hermit crabs are very, very hot, as in the summer, they would prefer this kind of shell, which allows them to stay cooler because it's thinner, as opposed to these whale eyes here that are very, very thick shells. They're also very heavy, and these would help them in the winter months or just in a colder habitat to stay a little bit warmer, because this will keep their warmth in. So that's another factor that plays into it. I don't know if the type of shell really plays into it. Like, this is a shark eye shell, this is a whale eye, and this is an abalonian. I don't know whether the pattern plays into it. If I remember, Bazooka has preferred these whale eye shells, but he's also been in the abalonian. I don't think he's ever been in the shark eye shells. Like I said, I see a lot of purple pinchers in turbos. This might just be because turbo is one of the most popular and easy to find shells. There are a number of other types of shells they can use as well. I have some up here. This shell is a Japanese land snail shell. As you can see, it's absolutely huge. I don't know any hermit crab that could possibly use this because it is a D opening, which means it would be better for Ecuadorians. But Ecuadorians, it would be rare if they could fit into this type of shell, and as you can see, this one is rather large. It's not too heavy. It's a little bit thick. I'd say it's between the abalonian and the shark and the whale eye here in thickness, but it's a little hefty. It might just be from the size. But a rare type of hermit crab that you wouldn't find at the pet store, maybe like a viola, or I don't know, an Indo crab, something that gets larger, and I don't know if they have flat abdomens or not, because personally I've never owned them, but they might prefer this type of shell since they tend to be larger crabs than Ecuadorians and may have the right abdomen shape. So yeah, that's pretty much all I needed to tell you guys about shells. It's really crucial that you guys have these for your hermit crabs if you have hermit crabs. To clean out the shells, when you buy them, you want to make sure you clean them out. It's really, really easy. All I do is I just take the shells and boil some water and just put them in the boiling water for a while. If there's anything left inside of them, it'll kill it. Of course, you might want to check the shells before you start boiling them to see if there's like a hermit crab inside. When I got this bag of shells and I boiled the ones I was going to use, there must have been something inside because it stank. I'm thinking it might have been a snail, but obviously it would have been a deceased snail since this is a bag that's been sitting in Walmart or like the stock room forever. So whatever it was dead, and it stank up when I boiled it. So you want to check to make sure there's no hermit crabs inside. It would be really depressing if I boiled some shells and then a hermit crab body floated out of the shell and it was dead. That would be really sad, because hermit crabs are just the greatest little things ever. Yeah, so I just boil them. I know a lot of people might put some like vinegar in the water. I think I might have done that once. I don't remember. I know you add something to the water, and I'm pretty sure it's just vinegar, not like a chemical like bleach or anything. But you just clean them out. It gets any like germs or anything out of them, and of course if there's something inside, then it kills that. It's just a nice way to sterilize the shells to make sure there's nothing in them, no diseases, anything like that. Just cleans them up nice. And then you just dump out all the water, dry them off, let them cool off, and then you can put them in the cage. I don't keep them in the cage at all times. I usually offer them for a while, and if no one's taking a bite, I don't leave them in the cage, because as you can see, they're kind of a little space consuming, especially in this small, just 10-gallon habitat. So I'll leave them in there for a while, and if no one is trying them out, I'll probably take them out and try again some other time. But right now is a pretty optimum time because my hermit crabs are coming out of molt. At least one of them is. That's Bazooka. He just came out last night, as I said. But when they come out, that means that they're finished growing. They went through a shed. That's what a molt is for a hermit crab. And so they're a little bit bigger. And they might be looking for a little bit bigger of a shell. It's also important to provide shells in the tank for them to choose from when the weather starts changing. Like I mentioned before, the thickness of the shell helps them maintain temperatures that they like, whether it's stay cool or stay warm. So it's important to offer it then. They might want to switch into a thinner or warmer shell. But I don't offer these every single day, just because, like I said, they're space consuming and they kind of just get knocked around. And so I'll offer them for a while. Hopefully someone will take the bait. I know that Blue could use a new shell because he is in that painted shell, and he could probably use something a little bit bigger. Bazooka definitely could because he's been in that tiny shell for too long. Probably because it's a nice shell on the inside, nice and worn, nice and smooth. But I'm hoping that Shy Guy will try and change shells. I think he's getting a little bit big for that one. He doesn't really go inside it all the way anymore. He used to. And so I got the turbos out. He's been messing with them, but he hasn't, to my knowledge, changed shells. So I'll also try and get a video for you guys if I catch one of my hermit crabs trying to change shells. It's really cool to watch. I'm sure you can find another video on YouTube if you really want to see it now. It's really interesting. They kind of like paw around in the shell with their claws, figure out if there's anything inside, get a feel for what's it like inside. And then, if they decide that the shell is worthy to be their new home, they will line themselves up. In one quick motion, they'll pull their butts out of their own shell and put them into the new shell. It's really important that they do this quick because they don't want any other hermit crabs seeing them vulnerable and try to eat them. And if they don't like the shell that they're in, they'll switch right back. But then there's always the problem that some other hermit crab comes over and takes their shell while they're trying out a new one, and then they're a little bit stuck. So it can be a really dramatic process, but it's really important to their health. In the wild, I think I've mentioned this before, but in the wild, hermit crabs live in groups of hundreds to even thousands of hermit crabs. And so when one changes a shell into a new shell that they find on the beach, it usually starts a giant wave of shell changing, where just one changes into this new shell he found, and then someone else changes in his shell, and someone into their shell, and it's just a giant wave of shell changing. But obviously at home, you won't have that effect, because you don't have thousands of hermit crabs living in one group, so you have to make sure you offer a variety of shells and a variety of sizes, and thicknesses, and I guess types of shells too. I don't know how much that plays in, but it's nice to have some different nice looking shells. So yeah, that's been my little segment on shells and their importance to hermit crabs. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned a little bit of something about hermit crabs and their needs when it comes to shells. Please like and subscribe to see more videos.